I think it's 7:30 and the mics are working. When both those conditions are present, we can start. And we have them both now. I'm Bill Anderson. I'm on the advisory committee of the Secular Humanist Committee or group or whatever we call it. And we had, as you know, the Secular Humanists examine all kinds of moral and ethical and political and philosophical issues, basically from a secular perspective. And so, but we had a program a month or so ago on Buddhism, and it was called Secular Buddhism. And so we got to thinking about that, and after the program, which is a very good program, we thought maybe we ought to open up to more people the notion of Buddhism, because it's a different religion in a lot of respects. 500 million Buddhists in the world, scattered all around, and there are variations, and as you would imagine in any religion of that size. And there are some, even we're going to hear tonight from someone who leads a Seattle group of Zen Buddhists and on a weekly basis, so we'll hear a little bit about that. But we just decided that this would be appropriate for secular humanists because the character of this religion is such in most of its manifestations, and of course there are variations, but one of the characteristics is it does not seem to have, as I look at it as a non-Buddhist, a deity or a beginning origin God who creates everything. And so the first Buddha was a human being, as far as we can tell, very, very wise. He was a prince, very wealthy and so on. But he was a human. And since then, all the other Buddhas, enlightened ones, have been human beings. So there is not a deity in the conventional sense that we in the Abrahamic religions are kind of used to. So that being the case, some say, well, why is it called a religion if it doesn't have a deity, a God? And that's an interesting question because it requires us to rethink the meaning of some of our words. And so we hope tonight we'll learn a little bit about the religion and maybe help us think through this question of how it can be a religion without a God in the conventional sense that we're used to. I'm going to turn the mic over to Janelle Reinhold, who is a resident here and who is a practicing Buddhist, and she's going to introduce our guest tonight. Jeanette?
So I've been practicing meditation in the Buddhist tradition for 7 or 8 years. And when I moved from California here, I just looked to see what was close and went. And the Seattle Soto Zen Center has been a really wonderful place for me to be. And I've really enjoyed learning from my teacher, who is here with us tonight, Kansen Allison Tate. She is the resident teacher and spiritual leader of the Seattle Soto Zen Sangha. And we meet up on 19th Street off of Madison for those of you who want to know where we gather. Kansen began her leadership in September of 2019 here, the second person to lead the Sangha in its 15-year history. Kansen has been practicing Zen since 2004. She comes here after 10 years of residency at the San Francisco Zen Center and the Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, also in the Bay Area. Kansen joined Tassajara Sangha in 2010 after taking lay precepts from her guiding teacher, Zokutsu Norman Fisher, a well-known Western Buddhist teacher, receiving from him her name, Koya Kansen, which means humble self, generous heart. In 2013, she was ordained as a Zen priest by Reverend Fisher. Kansen transferred her residency to San Francisco Zen Center's Beginner's Mind Temple in 2014. And during the fall practice period of 2017, Kansen received the honor of serving as Shusho, which is the head student. While living in San Francisco, Kansen pursued deeper opportunities for public service. She became a certified Buddhist chaplain at the Sandai Center for Buddhist Chaplaincy. And as well, she was certified as an interfaith chaplain by the Sojourn Chaplaincy Organization. So she came here to Seattle and took over in 2019, which, as you know, is like just before the big crash or shutdown of COVID. So it was a challenge, but she has been resourceful, and her Zen Sangha members love her a great deal. So I present to you Kanchan Allison Tate.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I traditionally in Zen Buddhism, we bow. We put our hands together, palm to palm, bow. So this is called gasho. So thank you again. Thank you very much. My name is Janelle said. My Buddhist name is Kyoji Kanchan, humble self, generous heart. My other name is Allison Tate, and I am Kanchan for a few hours each week, and the rest of the time I'm Allison, and I have a job in accounting. I'm from Canada, and I began my Buddhist practice. I think it's a common gate for Westerners who practice Buddhism, but I was interested in meditation, and specifically in my teens, I started developing really debilitating headaches called, say, cluster headaches, which I think is a subset of migraines. And I just couldn't cope with them. And I would have, these, kicked holes in my walls and would scream and cry and everything else because I didn't have a method for dealing with this kind of pain. And I'd heard of mindfulness-based meditation for chronic pain. I looked into it, and they wouldn't take me. I was under 18 at the time, and so they weren't accepting children. So I went, but I did know that Zen was, a meditation school. So I went to our local Zen temple and asked the teacher there if he would teach me how to meditate. And that was the beginning of my Buddhist career. I wasn't really interested in the liturgy. I just kind of wanted to meditate, and basically I only meditated when I felt like I needed it. And my teacher kept saying, well, you want to have, a regular practice. You want to have a teacher. You want to have a community. And, he was an old guy, so he didn't know anything. So I ignored him. And then I moved to Western Canada and had a number of personal crises, and became involved with two different Zen groups there. One was a Chinese Chan temple, and one was a Soto Zen sitting group. And through the Soto Zen group, I met my teacher, Norman Fisher. He's lives in California, close to Green Gulch Farm Zen Center, but he is kind enough to come up north a few times a year, including to Vancouver, Canada. And I met him there at a meditation retreat. We had a long conversation, and he suggested I do a deeper dive into Zen Buddhism. So I went to San Francisco Zen Center as an international student. I was actually a vocational student, which is an M1 visa for 3 years. And so they have a program. I don't think it's really running anymore because international students are not. There's all kinds of political reasons why international students aren't doing so well. But I was ordained by my teacher, Norman Fisher, at San Francisco Zen Center as part of their priest training program. And then, as Janelle said, I was a head student, which is sort of your graduation ceremony. After that, you are a teacher. So I was actually head student twice, once in 2017 and then again in 2019, right before I moved to Seattle. And while I was at the Zen monastery serving as head student, I got notification from a priest I know in the Seattle area and up in northern Washington, saying that Echo Jeff Kelly, our previous spiritual director at Seattle Soto Zen, was stepping down, and he suggested I might apply for the job. So I did, and I somehow got it. And so I was asked to say a little bit about Buddhism itself, and I think it began about 2,500 years ago, and the Buddha was a young man named, well, we don't really know, but Siddhartha Gautama is usually seen as his name. We call him Shakyamuni Buddha, but those are actually two titles. Shakyamuni means the sage, the wise person of the Shakya people. That was his clan, were the Sakyans. And Buddha means someone who's awake. So yeah, it's not actually a name, it's a title. And they always say now he was a prince. It's probably not true, because it doesn't seem like it was a monarchy, the area of India where he lived, but he was certainly a child of privilege. His father was a political leader, and the legend is that when young Siddhartha was born, he was brought to a fortune teller who said he will either be an exceptional politician or an exceptional religious leader. And his dad said, well, let's go with politician. And worked very, very hard to guide the young Buddha's path to politics, and failed. So in his early 30s, Siddhartha Gautama left his life of privilege to become a wandering monk. And I think this is a lesson that really resonates with me, that he was dealing with a problem that I think a lot of us have, which is, I have actually a pretty good life, right? I don't have to worry about food and shelter and clothing, and I have a loving family. I'm, really wealthy by the standards of my community and time. I'm still not happy. Why is that? It doesn't feel like it should be that way. So that was what he left his life of privilege to figure out. How come even when I'm so privileged and I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm still not happy? What's wrong? And he figured out really nothing is wrong. That this is just what happens when you have a physical body and a mind. That part of it is that things are, we can never really be satisfied with what we have, no matter what we get. And the classic phrasing of, the first truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering, which is a little more extreme than what was actually said. But it was basically, in our normal everyday life, we can never really be satisfied. We always think, if I get this one thing, if I accomplish this one thing, then that will be enough and I'll finally be happy. But it doesn't last. We need something else right after. And so that's kind of the truth that got passed down as life is suffering. And then there's also, people really do suffer in real ways. And classically, they say the three main causes of suffering are sickness, old age, and death. That, and again, it's not that something's gone wrong. It's that we have a body and a mind, and, they're not really all that reliable. If you have a body, it wears out, it breaks down, it gets sick, and eventually we will die. And it's interesting, even with all of the evidence that reminds me these are true, I still have this, suspicion that maybe it doesn't apply to me. Maybe I have some immunity, and I live my life most of the time, even though I know it's not true, most of the time I live my life as if I have some immunity to sickness, old age, and death, and all the other ways that we suffer. There's a very long list, but, being separated from those we love, being forced to associate with annoying people. And so the Buddha said, what is the answer to all of this? And he said, basically, it's just really deeply accepting and believing this truth that, I will never be satisfied if I keep trying to satisfy myself by achieving and attaining, then it'll never work. And that these forms of suffering, sickness, old age, and death definitely do apply to me. Right here and now, I am subject to all the ways that human beings suffer. And, it kind of sounds like it's a bummer religion, maybe even nihilistic. But for me, it was it was very helpful to hear, it's not actually something wrong. This is just, what you got into when you were born with a body and a mind. And every creature that has a body and a mind is subject to suffering. However, most creatures don't need to learn how to be a creature. Human beings are really special. We are very special. In Buddhism, they say this is the most fortunate form to be born in, is a human body, because we can accomplish so much and we understand so much. But it's also a form that has a lot of suffering that other forms don't have. So, I say, for me, my Zen practice is learning how to wholeheartedly inhabit my body and life as it is right now. And, the robins and pet cats and so on, they seem to have that figured out already. But for we human beings, it's a struggle. Just learning how to be a human being is a lifelong goal. Although at the same time, we do have it figured out because we are human beings. We're living human lives right now. So congratulations. So that was 2,500 years ago. The Buddha, after visiting many teachers of his time, he was a very good student, and he was asked by several teachers, will you take over my sect for me when I retire? And he said, I don't think your sect really has the answer I'm looking for. So he ended up finally inventing his own religion. And as Bill said, it's a religion without a god. Now, this was before Hinduism really existed, but it's kind of around when the Upanishads were being written. So there was sort of proto-Hinduism was very active in India at the time of the Buddha. And the Hindu gods actually do show up in the Buddhist scriptures. But the Buddha's viewpoint was, gods and spirits, whether they exist or not, we probably shouldn't worship them, because that'll just give them ideas beyond their station. So, Shiva and some of the other gods will show up in the scriptures, and basically they'll have a question for the Buddha that the Buddha will answer. And then Shiva will say, well, thank you very much, Buddha. I'll go back up to heaven and tell the other gods all about it. And then my particular school of Buddhism originated in China around the 6th century, which is Zen Buddhism. And the word Zen comes from the Chinese Chan, which comes from the Sanskrit jhana, that means to meditate. So Zen is the meditation school of Buddhism. And meditation is an aspect of all schools of Buddhism, but Zen is where it is, the primary practice. This is sort of what we're known for, what we do. And in Soto Zen, the particular form of meditation is this, what they say, objectless, formless meditation. So it's very hard to describe in words, so I usually say resting in open awareness. So it's sort of trying to experience the world without, the mediator that usually stands between me and the world and giving me all kinds of opinions and perspectives and so on, to just give that mediator a little bit of a break and meet the world with more openness and curiosity. And there's especially when Zen was really popular in the 70s, they talked about, the purpose is to destroy the ego or to kill the self, which is not true. Our sense of self is very robust, and a few periods of meditation aren't going to kill it. But we can sort of get a little bit more of a perspective on this self, and understanding, first of all, that, this is another place where Buddhism really deviates from other religious traditions, is that the Buddha looked at everything and he said, if I take a cell phone and break it up into its component parts, and if I break those component parts up as small as I can, I will never find this tiny, perfect cell phone that has the essence of phoniness that makes my phone a phone, right? Don't try this at home. I can guarantee you it won't work. He said, I know this about the physical world. He actually talked about a carriage, not a cell phone, but, same sort of thing. And he said, I wonder if myself is the same way, if this human being is the same way. And he thought about it a long time, and he said, I don't think you can break apart a human being and find this tiny, perfect homunculus that is the soul, that is eternal and has the complete essence of this human being. He said, I think it's the same as carriages and cell phones, that it is constantly changing and there is no, set eternal anything. Everything is always changing, including ourself. So our memory gives us this illusion of a self that kind of goes through our life basically unchanged. But if I, really query my memories, you can see, no, that actually wasn't what I was like back then. I have a lot of different opinions, and I do a lot of different things now than I did 20 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever. So this sense of self is mostly a creation of our mind. And then we get really attached to it. We really love this self that we've created and we'll do anything to defend it. And then realizing, oh, actually, this is a creation of my mind. And because I created it, I can change it. And because it's a creation of my mind, it actually isn't the boss of me. There's a teacher, he's not a Zen teacher, but in a different school of Buddhism, where he talked about in one of his books, imagine somebody walking down the street right next to you. And as they were walking, they were narrating your internal monologue out loud into your ear. What would you do? It's like, well, you'd either call an ambulance or a cop, but you certainly wouldn't believe what he was saying. The voice inside my head, somehow it's much more persuasive, but it doesn't mean it's more real. So this is sort of my view of Zen practice, is that we meditate in order to uncover the self in relation to the world, and to really realize how our mind is working and how we create all this unnecessary suffering for ourselves and for the people around us. Because there's so much suffering that is unavoidable. We can't avoid sickness, old age, and death. And we create so much extra suffering on top of it. And it's like, we don't need to do that. Things are hard enough without it. But over and over again, I have to, create new ways for me to suffer and find ways to spread that suffering amongst all the people I love best who I don't want to suffer at all. So that is my particular teaching of Zen Buddhism at Seattle Soto Zen. And I think one other important thing is when the Buddha was asked about, who created the world? How did it come into existence? He was asked that several times, and he said, it's really not profitable to worry too much about that. You can just throw that in the unanswered questions bin. And for, a lot of suffering, there is the teaching of karma, which is often misunderstood, but it's basically, this is the suffering that we create for ourselves and others, just out of confusion, out of greed, out of selfishness. Mostly we don't know we're doing it. And so this is a very important thing to think about, is these habit patterns. What habit energy we have that is creating this cycle of suffering and keeping it going. And I think this is where, doing a lot of meditation day after day, that's where, for me, it finally became clear. It's like, this feeling of not being good enough, it came from somewhere. It doesn't necessarily matter where, but it was my parents. And and for years, I have been feeding this pattern and keeping it going, even though it's hurting me all the time. And then I'm like, oh, why is my life so hard? And it's because I have this habit of mind that I need to convince myself over and over again I'm not good enough. And, I realized I can just stop telling myself this story, which of course was a lot more, having that realization was a lot of work. And then to actually stop telling myself that story was even harder work, which I'm still working on. But, that we can do this. And other than that, people ask the Buddha, how come some people are born healthier than others? How come some people are born richer than others? Where does that come from? And, a lot of schools of Buddhism nowadays will tell you, they can tell you in detail, well, this is what you did in a previous life that caused this suffering in this life. But that's not really what the Buddha taught. The Buddha said, this is another good question to put in the unanswered questions bin. You can fret about it, but even if I gave you the answer, it really wouldn't help. What does help is, fully inhabiting your body and life as it is right now. And to be aware and open to the suffering of the people around you, and tap into that innate desire to help, that human connection. And that is something, we've had a lot of new people come to Seattle Soto Zen recently, and they've been meditating using apps and so on. And they said, and that was really good for a long time, but I realized I needed that human connection. And that is a huge part of Buddhism, and especially Zen Buddhism as I practice, is this, being held by this community. And teachers told me over and over again when I was a young person, didn't listen to anyone, you need a community and you need a teacher. I was like, well, of course a teacher would say I need a teacher, right? But one of the things I had to find out for myself was actually true. So I am, absolutely honored to be the resident teacher at Seattle Soto Zen, to be working with this fantastic group, and delighted to have met Janelle and be invited to speak to you all today. So that's about all of my prepared speech. I was wondering, do we have questions? I think specifically we're talking about religion without God. And I have when I was a student at San Francisco Zen Center in the priest training program, I was going through the airport, and the agent was like, what's this M1 designation? I said, oh, I'm a student. So what are you studying? I said, religious studies. I said, yeah, what religion? I said, Zen Buddhism. And he said, well, Zen Buddhism isn't a religion. It's a philosophy. And I said, okay. And he stamped my passport. I think Buddhism in general, because, they say there's no overarching God and there's no eternal soul. It's like, well, you kind of need those for religion. And then Zen Buddhism, of course, has this reputation for being very austere and sparse and having that, ascetic. And so I said it's sort of like there's a story of someone asked Michelangelo, how did you carve the David? And he said, well, it was easy. I took this slab of marble and I just removed all the marble that wasn't David. So we have generations of Zen teachers who are saying, actually, all of this stuff is non-essential, and ending up with this objectless, formless meditation as the main practice, which is about as sparse as you can get. And it's like, well, there really doesn't seem to be a lot of religion there. One of my teacher's teacher, Sojin Mel Weitzman, told me once, in Zen Buddhism, we have a proud tradition of iconoclasm. And I said, iconoclasm cannot be a tradition. And he laughed and he said, okay, you're right. But I think, this sparseness kind of, you're like, well, there's no religion there. But I don't know if just calling it philosophy is enough, because when Janelle ordained as a lay student, the ordination ceremony is making a public commitment to ethical conduct. And I think that's a big deal. Maybe that's enough to put us in the religion category, unless secular humanism has a similar ceremony, in which case. But I think also it's not a topic I have strong feelings about, and I'm very happy that a lot of people who have been injured by the religion they grew up in find solace in Zen Buddhism. So if they say, I'm happy here because it's not really religion, I'm like, okay. There was a question over here, and then there's a question in the back. Do you still have a question, or did I answer it somehow? And in the back, Janelle over there.
I'm not sure this is appropriate, But in
Let's do it anyway.
Okay, good. I consider nature a wonderful overall, do I use the word religion or what? But to me, if I meditate, just thinking about the wonders of nature and birds, I am solace.
Yeah, I think that's that there are Asian religions that put more emphasis on that. Buddhism is more sort of just being available for whatever happens, and it might be the wind and the birds, and, it might be the cars honking on 19th Avenue. It might be the garbage truck that stopped by our old Zendo every morning during our second period of meditation. So it's just sort of being there for whatever happens, and trying to give our preferences a little bit of a break. So if birdsong happens, then we accept that with joy and gratitude. And if a garbage truck happens, we accept that with joy and gratitude. But, I think that's sort of, when I talk about fully inhabiting my body and life, it means the crappy parts too, right? Because whether I'm in my body while it's happening, I'm getting older, right? So it's my life is getting shorter every day, whether I'm paying attention or not. So, I might as well pay attention.
Okay, should I go ahead?
Please.
Yes, my question. Meditation. I've never been able to do it, and I want to know, do you have something in your head that you chant, or do you just sit there and I just have never been able to do it.
Well, there are a lot of guided meditations that are available, especially for newcomers, and they usually start with a body scan, often lying down and just sort of...
Lying down.
Yeah, going through your body. I think it usually from the top to the bottom, and sort of, bringing awareness to your body and trying, allowing it to relax, allowing it to, embracing my body as it is.
You're not sitting?
And for Zen meditation, a really good place to start is with the breath as an object of meditation.
Okay.
Breathing is a wonderful object because, it's always with us. I mean, if you're not breathing, you should probably stop meditating and start breathing again. And it's an automatic function, but we also have some conscious control over it, right? So the very basic form is to bring my awareness of my breath to my belly. And this is, another way where Buddhism is kind of different from the Abrahamic religions, is it doesn't have this strict division between the body and the mind. It's like the body and mind, they say, are not two. They're not the same thing, but they're constantly informing each other. So we bring our attention to the breath in our belly, and then breathe in and count 1, breathe out and count 1, and count up to 10. And if I lose count, then I start again at 1. If my mind wanders to my grocery list, I start again at 1. If I make it all the way to 10, I start again at 1. And this is just sort of,
So your mind wanders?
all the time. That's just, and that's just kind of what the mind does. And it's a problem because we make it into a problem.
What in this world of Buddhist acceptance of the world around them, what does a Buddhist do in the era of Trump, where we see so many things happening to human beings that shouldn't be happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for every Buddhist and every human being to answer themselves. And I think there's a legend in Buddhism about the Pure Land. So some enlightened people, when they were enlightened, they developed wonderful magical powers as a side effect of waking up. And they created this beautiful land where, if you can't practice in this life, you can go to their Pure Land instead. And conditions are perfect for practice. You can finally meditate. If you have, 8 kids at home and you never have a chance to meditate, well, you can ask very kindly for this Buddha to let you go to the Pure Land in your next life, and you'll have perfect conditions for meditation there all the time. And there's a sort of a tradition in Zen about, well, do you want to go to the Pure Land? Let's all go to the Pure Land together. And it's like, ta-da, here we are. And it's like, well, the world as it is already the Pure Land. We already have everything we need, and things are as bad as we think they are. Actually, they're probably worse. There is so much suffering, and at the same time, we always have the conditions for liberation. And I think the trick is, being this small, inconsequential human being dealing with such huge global issues, is finding, where is it that I can make a difference? And it might not be in the issues that I think are really important. Like, I don't think I can do much to stop the wars in the Middle East. And I can reach out to the people around me who are grieving. I can support groups that I believe in. And I can just be a good friend. And it's, again, it's not... most of the answers you get from Buddhism, I think that's why the Buddha chose not to answer a lot of questions, is that none of the answers are really all that satisfying. And they mostly boil down to, well, figure it out for yourself. One thing that is sort of lacking in Western Buddhism that we're working on is this service aspect that a lot of the established religions have. Did that help at all? No, not at all. I didn't think so.
I want to know if you're going to show up for a demonstration to protect
I
rights.
am not a U.S. citizen, so I have not been going to demonstrations.
But you know who is here.
Yes,
They go to any demonstration.
yes. And, it's a difficult thing, being a registered charity. You sort of walk a tightrope when it comes to political issues. And one thing I've been trying to do more as the teacher at Seattle Soto Zen is, bringing that inclusivity, for things like just focusing more on women teachers of color, and creating, a safe space for everybody. It is really nowhere near enough considering the magnitude of the problems in front of us. But I'm not a very big person, so we're all just doing the best we can. There was another question there in the black shirt. Oh, over here.
Yeah, I worked in Asia, in Myanmar and Thailand, with socially engaged Buddhists.
Yes.
And they really were willing to take a stand and do things about things that they felt were politically not right, that were going on, and be more a part of trying to bring change to the things that were around them. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that. It may not be part of the Zen Buddhism here, but it is a part of Buddhism.
I think, it's very different when you're in a Buddhist country. And it can be in very negative ways as well. It can show up. But in Myanmar, the monks protested, and they would literally walk with their alms bowls upside down. So they're saying, we are publicly rejecting offerings from politicians. So this was the tradition in India, was that the monks lived, very austere lives, and they only ate what was given to them. And it's in Southeast Asia, it's a little bit, like, if you give us food and resources, and we'll meditate on your behalf, because we know you don't have time to meditate. And so, this largely Buddhist country, to say, we won't take your donations, was, a huge upset. And again, there are places, like Sri Lanka, where the Buddhist majority, including some monks and some senior teachers, sort of tried to get religious violence going, right? So if you have more power, you can screw more things up. But being in the U.S., I don't know if we even organize. First of all, if we organized protests for all the Buddhists in the U.S., I don't know how many would come. And secondly, I'm not sure if there'd be enough of us for anyone to care.
In many of the Buddhist centers, you have images of the Buddha.
Yep.
You have the lighting of incense and all that. What do those things contribute to Buddhism?
Well, it's interesting, because when the Buddha was dying, in his final address to his students, he said, "Don't become, don't become priests. Really, don't take on the role of performing spiritual services for the community. Focus on meditation instead." And he also said, "Don't make any statues of me or paintings after I die." And of course, we immediately turned around, and what Buddhism is known for in a lot of the world is for funeral and memorial services, which is, it's not a bad thing. This is something that people need, and it's a very deeply understood need of the community. It's a great kindness to do. And we also immediately started making statues of him. And I think it's just, again, this is human nature, right? Monks that were filling this particular niche, if someone comes to you and says, my child has died, my husband has died, can you say something? Can you perform some service? Can you chant? Of course you would, right? And then, as humans, we need these tactile things to look at and think about. And burning incense, there's an idea, when someone comes to your home, you would burn incense just to make the place smell good. So it's just a way of welcoming esteemed visitors. Would be offering water for drinking, water for washing, flowers, scent. There's a couple of other ones that I can't think of right now. And, these, like everything that was invented by human beings, things evolve, we add new things, and then the Zen Buddhists come along and take them away. And then someone else puts them back in. And we're always, arguing about what is necessary and what isn't. There's an ongoing debate about whether wearing, robes and chanting in Japanese is necessary or not. Different Zen groups have different answers.
Could you tell us a little about how the...
I think there was another question here. She's been waiting a little while.
Are there any Zen Buddhist scientists?
Oh, yes, many Zen Buddhist scientists. Yes.
Can you give any names?
Not off the top of my head, unfortunately. But there are, the Dalai Lama worked a lot, mostly with mind scientists, but also with physicists and so on.
Physicists and so forth?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Fred, here.
Thank you.
Could you just tell us a little about how the Zen community here works? First of all, what is Soto Zen? What does that mean? And how is what is the life of the community like?
So Soto, there are two main schools of Zen, which are Soto and Rinzai. Rinzai is probably the one you think of when you think of Zen. And the big difference, so they're both Japanese schools. They have corollary schools in different countries. So what I'm saying now only applies to how it's practiced in Japan and carried over to the West through Japanese teachers. But koans are very important in Zen Buddhism, in all schools of Zen Buddhism. And koans are, they're not actually riddles, but they're teaching stories. So then they're like the teaching stories that we all have, where I had some sort of problem. I was creating all this suffering in my own mind. And then I heard this bird singing. And something about this transformative experience of meeting this bird song gave me a new perspective on this problem I had. Or, I brought a problem to my teacher, and my teacher said, you can torture yourself with that question over and over again, but it's probably best to just put it in the unanswered questions bin and concentrate on something that is relevant to your human life here and now instead. And we all have these problems. It becomes a koan when we tell these stories to other people and they tell it to someone else. So it's a story until another teacher gives a commentary on it, and then it becomes a koan. So it's sort of having precedent for in the justice system.
Thank you.
All Zen schools have koans. In Rinzai, there's a certain form of meditation that is koan meditation. And in Soto Zen, we have the emphasis instead on this objectless, formless meditation, this resting in open awareness.
So again, how does the community actually work? I mean, you have
we meet on Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. for meditation and Dharma talk.
What time?
9 a.m. at our Zendo at Capitol Hill, 2 30-minute periods of Zazen, followed by service and a Dharma talk by me, usually. We have other teachers as well. We also have online morning meditation at 8 a.m. Monday to Saturday, at 6 a.m. on Wednesdays. And we just are wrapping up our book group, but we're kind of working on another book group. And starting in October, we'll have an evening class that will probably be online. So it sort of varies with the seasons. Our offerings are a little bit sparser in the summer because everyone's on vacation, and then we sort of double down a little bit more in the fall and winter and have more classes and more teachings.
What's the name of the place?
Seattle Soto Zen.
Is there a website?
There sure is. SeattleSotoZen.org. Soto is SOTO.
Is the mic on? Is my mic on? Okay. I want to go back to your question that the guy asked when you were in the airport, and you said, well, I'm doing religious studies and I'm doing Buddhism and all that. And
Yep.
so, well, that's not a religion, it's a philosophy.
Yes.
But the other way to answer it, I mean, without using the word philosophy, you could say, is Buddhist simply a mind training?
Yes.
Where you're working with all the negative, hateful aspect, because we're full of hateful aspects within our mind. And part of Buddhist mind training is to not to shove those down, but to acknowledge them, to work with them through all kinds of different means to make you a person of more helpful use in the world. And then there are also Zen places that really emphasize more social activism, such as Upaya Center in New Mexico. It does a lot of work besides simple meditation. And then the founder of Soto Zen was very much a nature lover, Dogen, up in his, that's how I got interested in Soto Zen, was visiting his monastery.
Yes.
Beautiful. And things like beautiful settings, beautiful architecture, and the fact that that place is still a very, from the 12th century till today, it's still a very active monastery. And I would much rather go and spend some time there than to sit in traffic on the freeway. I mean, environments are important.
Yeah, well, I think when we speak about mind training, it again is a little tricky because everything we do, we're training our mind, right? But mostly we do it, kind of unconsciously in a sort of confused way. So Zen meditation, we're kind of looking at how our mind works and trying to, make conscious and mindful choices about what do I want to train in, and as the Buddha said over and over again when he was asked questions, he's like, that question, it's not a great question. Focus on something that, actually makes a difference in your life here and now.
Other questions?
And, we are looking into more social engagement at Seattle Soto Zen. As I said, I work full time. Most of the people in our community work full time, and it's a pretty small community. So the big thing is, just having the person power. I think Janelle, I think there's a follow-up question from the lady in the colorful shirt.
Oh, Ruth. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask, are you a Canadian citizen?
I am a Canadian citizen.
Do you have any desire to be an American citizen? And certainly there are things you can...
No.
Allison, I wouldn't answer that
Very
question.
good choice.
She may be an ice plant.
I'm a legal permanent resident of the U.S.
Oh, you can be?
I am.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, at this time, I don't have any desire to pursue American citizenship.
Quite right.
Other questions?
Okay. Are we through? Okay.
If not, I should say thank you very much to our guest for this conversation.
Thank you.
And I think you all heard the reference points. SeattleZotoZen.org will get you into their website, which will answer many, many questions about materials and procedures and so on. And of course, you've always got Janelle here as a neighbor who can fill you in with.
Who can't answer questions very well, but will do the best.
You know where the answers are hiding. And thank you very much, Allison. It's been very good.
Thank you.